I was just going to share with you the apparition that I had. So on Tuesday the 22nd of November, I woke up at 2 a.m. in the morning, and there was an apparition above my head, and it was a bunch of large grapes, and they started being popped, and as they were being popped, it was releasing a whole heap of black powder everywhere. And I lay back down on my bed a little bit confused. It's not the first time I've had an apparition appear before me, and I was tired and lazy, and I was lying there, and I got this asthmatic cough, and I do have asthma from time to time, and I haven't had it for a while, so I didn't have the asthma pump, next to my bed as usual, and I lay there, and it was just like a asthma cough from 2 in the morning. I was too lazy to get up and find my asthma pump, and just thought I'd just, plod along through the night. And that's kind of the way it sometimes happens with asthma. So the next morning I woke up, and it was probably the worst I've ever had asthma. And, I ended up, sort of finding Preventers and Ventolin and things like that. For the next couple of weeks, just not getting the asthma really under control. It just was that, nagging, niggling, horrible, yucky irritation. But I did tell Mark about my apparition, and some of you would have heard about that apparition as well. I rang a few friends up and I said, oh my goodness, how bizarre is this? I've woken up with this big bunch of grapes hanging over me, being popped, releasing black powder everywhere, and couldn't breathe after that. So to cut a sort of a long story short, it was in fact 2.5 weeks later that I went for the ultrasound, and then of course the biopsy. And while I'm lying there on that bed, I'm just staring up at the ceiling and trying to pretend I'm not participating in any of that. My beloved was in the room, and he was looking at the screen along with the radiologist and the sonographer. And afterwards he asked me, what did you think? What were you thinking during that process? And I'm looking at him and I'm like, well, actually, I was just reliving that moment of when my son was diagnosed at 3.5 with cancer. He had a Wilms tumour, which is a childhood kidney cancer. And, so we looked at a lot of ultrasound machines as they sort of investigated and measured, kidneys and all the other stuff. And he was just ashen, and he said, well, I'm just looking at the screen, and what's going through my head is that it looked exactly as you had predicted and described 2.5 weeks ago. He says, he was looking at the screen and just he saw, these bunches of grapes and just this smattering of black powder. And, so for him, even though he is not on my path, it was a recognition that we each do things differently and experience things differently, and possibly, there was that acknowledgement that, yes, some of the things that I see or feel or hear are a bit kooky, but sometimes it's, reassuring when someone else who is very medical acknowledges that, yep, they heard my story 2.5 weeks ago and acknowledges me in that process. Thank you for listening.